Most gardeners are taught to fight clay soil. They dig it out, replace it, poison it with quick fixes, or, well, just give up entirely. Yet some of the most productive agricultural civilizations in history farmed heavy clay successfully for thousands of years, without machinery, fertilizers, or modern soil science. Their fields did not compact, flood, crack, or starve crops. They understood a soil truth modern gardening still struggles to relearn. Clay itself is not the problem. Unbalanced clay is, and the ancient solution still works better than most modern methods. Ancient farmers understood clay as a nutrient engine, not a curse. Clay holds more nutrients than sand or loam ever could. Ancient farmers noticed that crops grown in properly managed clay soils stayed greener longer, resisted drought better, and recovered faster after stress. The mistake modern gardeners make is treating clay like dead matter. Clay particles are electrically charged. They attract nutrients, water, and microbial life. Ancient growers learned that if you stabilize clay instead of breaking it apart, it becomes the most reliable soil base imaginable. The secret was binding clay with stable carbon and organic matter. Across ancient farming cultures, from Roman estates to early Asian terraces, the same principle appears repeatedly. Clay was never left bare. It was always bound with long-lasting organic material. Charred plant matter, decomposed manure, leaf mould and compost were added repeatedly over time, not to loosen clay, but to lock it into stable aggregates. These aggregates created permanent air channels, improved drainage, and prevented compaction without destroying the clay's nutrient-holding power. Why stable carbon changed everything in clay soils? Ancient farmers unknowingly created what modern soil science now calls carbon-clay complexes. Charcoal and fully decomposed organic matter act as anchors. Clay particles cling to them instead of sticking to each other. This prevents the brick-like hardening gardener's fear while keeping nutrients available to plant roots. Once established, this structure does not wash away or collapse. That is why ancient clay fields remain productive for generations with minimal intervention. So, let's talk about how water behavior improved without any drainage systems. See, clay soil usually fails when water either pools on the surface or just disappears too quickly. But ancient growers, they solved this problem by increasing infiltration instead of relying on drainage. The carbon-bound clay would absorb rain quickly, store it deep within the soil, and then release it slowly over time. That meant fields could resist both flooding and drought at the same time. And honestly, that's why ancient terrace farms and floodplain gardens could survive those extreme weather swings, long before irrigation technology even existed. Now, why do modern fixes often make clay worse? Well, things like tilling, dumping gypsum, and constantly replacing soil actually break the natural bonding that clay needs. Tillage destroys the aggregates and collapses the pore spaces, you know? Those quick amendments, they just leach away. And synthetic fertilizers, they might feed your plants for a bit, but they end up starving the soil life. Ancient farmers, on the other hand, avoided all that disturbance. They built their soil from the surface downward, letting biology do the work slowly and, well, permanently. So, how do you apply this ancient clay method in a modern garden? Well, first, stop all that aggressive digging. Clay actually improves when you leave it intact. Only add compost when it's fully broken down, dark and crumbly. Just spread it on the surface and let rain and organisms pull it downward, naturally. To introduce stable carbon, add fine charcoal or biochar, but make sure it's been soaked in compost tea or manure slurry before you put it on the soil. Never add raw charcoal dry, it must be charged first. So, the key is to apply organic matter repeatedly in thin layers over several seasons, rather than dumping it all on at once. Mulch heavily with leaves, straw or chopped plant residue. This protects the surface and feeds those hard-working microbes, you know. And, do avoid walking on wet clay. That's really important. Let worms and roots create channels naturally, just as they would in the wild. Within 1 to 2 seasons, you'll notice the soil stops cracking, drainage improves, and plants start rooting deeper without any extra effort on your part. Let's look at some practical examples from real growing situations. Vegetable beds in clay become workable all year round when built in this way, holding on to moisture through the hottest spells, yet draining away excess rain. Fruit trees, as a result, establish stronger root systems and can resist stress for much longer. Raised beds constructed over clay really thrive when the clay beneath is improved instead of simply isolated. And even the most compacted lawns can over time be converted into fertile ground by using surface composting and carbon binding, rather than just digging everything out. Now, the reason this method leads to permanent improvement rather than just a quick fix is quite fascinating. Once those clay particles bond with stable carbon, the structure actually persists for decades. Nutrients remain available, you see, and microbial populations start to stabilize. Roots are able to penetrate deeper and deeper with each passing season. This isn't merely soil repair, it's soil evolution. Ancient farmers, well, they passed these fields down, knowing they would get better with time, not worse. So, what did those ancient growers know that perhaps modern gardening has forgotten? They understood that soil isn't something you just fix, it's something you build. Clay doesn't need to be conquered, you know. It needs to be partnered with. When you treat clay properly, it actually becomes the most forgiving and resilient growing medium you could hope for. The real secret, passed down through generations, was patience, carbon, and a focus on surface-based improvement, not brute force. If this sort of grounded, timeless agricultural knowledge means something to you, well, do consider subscribing to Farm Logic. And, you know, share this with other growers who are perhaps tired of fighting their soil and are ready to work with it instead. These methods, after all, fed entire civilizations long before any modern products existed, and they still work just as well today.